Same.
Same as last year.
See, they're going down.
You're doing. Did they decide to do that? If- And let me get my husband's. I got my notification.
I got my turn on too.
Because I had it on 20 days and as long as I can, if I could do it.
Didn't write it down.
I was writing it and I thought he was with me because I said it out loud.
That was good.
Did you? I should have seen this today.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and call the Budget Committee meeting, April 27th, 2023 to order at 6:08 PM. We'll pass the sign-out sheet around. First thing up is a motion to adopt the agenda. Sure. Thank you, Mr. McQueen.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Acuff. All in, any corrections, additions, modifications need to be made? Everyone sees? Anybody want to add as a topic of discussion, whatever? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, first up on the chopping block, Sessions Court budget. Is that a new one that you've just given us, Carolyn? The juvenile services one?
Juvenile Services and Sessions Court are both new. As far as Sessions Court is concerned, the only change is the judge's salary, which is state mandated. And we did put in for some part-time work because he's gonna have some people out. And he didn't have a part-time on in there before, so that it'll just be to cover some help when he's doesn't have staffing there.
Okay.
So everything else is, and I did increase the amount for the computer. Computers are now running, 15 to 18 to 2,000.
Yeah.
And so what I did on the budgets that hadn't been presented, as we put them in, I've increased that amount from 1,200. Those have gone up significantly, and that was based on Anthony's recommendation.
Yeah. And then what changed on the juvenile one? Or anything? No, we're on Sessions still starting.
Well, I mean, the insurance and that kind of stuff
Gotcha.
with everybody else's, but
So basically, it's just a $7,000 increase over what we had saw previously.
well, I mean, this is new. This is the first time.
Oh, this is the first time on Sessions? Okay.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions about anything that's on here? I think this is all straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, that one's an easy one. So, and of course, everybody's insurance we took up. And the insurance and the retirement are in here at the correct percentage. And then the tax increase for the $5,000 for the part-time. He doesn't think he'll need that much, but we put 2,500 in before where he had asked for that. So since he said there were going to be two different people out at two different times, I just doubled it.
Okay.
He'll only use what he needs.
Hearing no questions or comments, we'll jump on down to the juvenile services one.
Basically the same thing on that one. I did put the part-time in his budget this time. If it needs to be moved to this one, I'll leave that to his discretion.
Doesn't have,
Insurance changed.
on the line item on this one, it doesn't have anything in there for part-time personnel.
Yeah, I put it all in his.
Oh, okay.
When I talked to him, we discussed it and we just decided that might be the best option. And then he can move it between the two if he needs to.
Okay. So there's no issues moving between these two funds?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a budget amendment because they're both his departments.
Oh, okay.
Other than that, insurance was the only difference.
Why was there such a large unencumbered balance at the end of last year for the contracts with government agencies? Shows $16,788.
Check, I don't know off the top of my head, and I didn't bring their trial balance in here. I can check and email you.
Yeah, the youth services officer, yeah, the youth services officer had like,
Juveniles incarcerated are the charge.
oh, okay.
Maybe, it may be the juvenile detention.
Yes. It goes through there.
Okay, so they just had less,
It actually goes through me. I'm the one that signs the bill and sees how many he's got in there each month. And I normally call him and ask him why we're holding them for X amount of days because it's like $235 a day. And the juvenile detention center does not want them held over 3 days. Sometimes he's held them 15. So I make him aware all the time about how it's really eating into us.
You know,
To pull them.
homicides.
Yeah, but some of them,
Felonies.
some of them they have to keep because we don't have anywhere to put them right now. So it eats us pretty heavily. Some months it'll be 2 or 3 go in for 15 days. Some months he has none. So it just fluctuates.
okay, so that answers
Yeah.
that one. Why was the officer's pay still left like so, like basically more than 10% of it was left at the end of last year? I think the encumbered balance is $7,700.
There was a staffing shortage, I believe. And then, yeah, I think.
One of the
he-
girls quit, and she went a period of time without having any help. It took her a while to get somebody
Get
hired.
somebody else.
So
Okay.
Anna left, I don't know his name, but the little gap there was.
Yeah, and I started saying the one girl has been there all the time, but then one left and then it took a while to rehire. Thank you. It took me a minute. I was looking, I'm like, what are you talking about? Okay, never mind.
All right, does anybody else have any questions on this one? We'll keep chugging along. Something strikes you later, we can come back to it. Elections Commission.
Yeah, Tracy's under the weather, which by the way, she got the contract for the new voting machines. We got it signed and returned today after Josh looked over it. Hopefully, they will be in for the special call June election. So that would be a great time for a trial run on the new machines. So that's what she's pushing for.
Please tell me it's not Dominion.
That's exactly
It's
what I was
what?
gonna ask. No, it's not Dominion. It's,
It was one of the
No, it
options,
wasn't
though, that's what.
Dominion.
yeah, I signed it today. It wasn't Dominion though.
No, it was a different.
Nobody would
X,
question.
it was Gen X or Gen something, I think.
Okay.
Something similar to that. Yeah, it wasn't Dominion.
Yeah, but also in her budget, because we'd done it, and it hadn't been presented yet. So we redid it yesterday because of the special called election. So her numbers went back up to what they were last year. Now, some of that we will get reimbursed for, but we still have to put it in the budget because we have to pay it up front.
Yeah.
So if there's only like one candidate for say, and there's no primary and all that stuff, it will reduce the amount, but there's no way to know that. So we just had to put it back up to the same as it was last year. And then she probably won't use it all, but it's in there in case she needs it.
You don't have all precincts. These year restricted precincts because it comes from a small amount of county.
Yeah, I don't think they,
The main elections commission has to take.
There's only 5 precincts.
Huh?
There's only 5 precincts in that district.
Yeah, it'll just be pretty much District 2 and 6.
Yeah.
It's gonna affect.
Then it affects a lot more of Unicoi County.
Yeah, of course, in Johnson County, no, not Unicoi, Johnson, Sullivan and Hawkins.
There are 2 elections, so you know that, don't you? You got a primary and a general.
Well, that is if they opt to go primary, if you've got more than one opponent, or the parties decide to have that.
It's crazy.
Any questions on this one?
The way it sits right now.
It's 483.
Yeah, what's the percentage increase on it? Should be 2%, 3%.
Not even, 1% would be what, 4,700?
I think it's about 2%.
Yeah, it's about 2%.
Yeah, her maintenance agreement went up just a tiny bit. And the rentals went up just a tiny bit.
Any questions, guys? We'll Charlie Mike on down to the revised and correction, revised sheriff and corrections.
So this takes out the one SRO position, it changes the pensions and the insurance back to the correct amount. And then when you go in and start doing the revenue analysis, the county will be adding in the revenue for the SROs that we get from the state, because that will come through the county. I mean, it goes to the sheriff's department, but it does come through the county that helps offset some of those expenses.
Yeah, because if we get them all, that'll offset, what, 5 SRO?
Explain to me, it's gonna offset every SRO.
Yeah.
So it's a
What?
set number per school.
Yeah.
It will offset all those.
Yeah, it should do all of them based on the stuff Abby sent me.
Because the state grant was for 10, and then we provided for 6 more.
Exactly. They're all,
So this will offset those 5, and then the other thing we weren't really
exactly.
School system.
obligated for. So that's gonna be cool. Yeah.
There was one other adjustment on that one. They had to lease for how many vehicles?
We've got 3 vehicles that we leased 3 years ago, a 3-year lease. That is up this month. Now, there's 3 options. You can turn them back in, which is gonna cost several $1,000s. You can buy them straight out for $45,000 and some odd dollars. I don't have the exact number. Or we can extend the lease for another year, which is $15,400 some dollars, I think. That's what we're requesting, to extend it, to keep, and we may buy them at the end of next year, but right now, we're just asking to extend the lease because we cannot replace those vehicles for $45,000. So we're asking to extend the lease, and hopefully 24 budget, we can maybe purchase them. Because they're still good vehicles and they won't be. I'd say most of them's got under
40,000.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Yeah, it's a Jeep,
It's a Jeep Compass, a Dodge Durango, and a Dodge.
Yeah, because those are normally 60,000 on the buy. So,
Yeah, it was a good deal to.
plus equipment and all that other fun stuff. Because if we turn them back in, we have to turn in, we have the equipment, which costs money.
Well, the thing is, a leased vehicle, you keep the equipment in.
Oh, so these aren't,
Just to be level about this, Chief Parrish equipped 2 of these vehicles. Just want to be open and let everybody know what's
I
going
didn't
on.
know that.
He equipped 2 of the vehicles while they were still under lease.
So we're buying those no matter what.
You bought those.
That's why, yeah, the only one that didn't equip was the Jeep Compass, but he did equip the Durango and he did equip the Dodge truck.
That's what I was not.
I know that, and I know that, and I had to talk him out of it.
Oh, man, if those things get,
So,
I'm not gonna.
but they are good vehicles. We cannot replace them for that amount of money. So to lessen the blow, we'd just like to extend the lease 1 more year or revisit it with the next budget about purchasing. So like I said, they're all under 50,000 miles, so they'll last a while.
Yeah, and it's 15,000 for all 3.
They're not getting extreme mileage like a pro vehicle. So they're gonna last.
And it's 15,000 for all 3?
15,400 and some dollars, I think was, for all 3. That's the annual payment on all 3.
Okay, that's cool.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Floor.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what's the purchase price on all 3 vehicles?
45,000, between 45 and 46. I don't have the exact number.
Okay, so if we bought the 2 equipped vehicles, let the other one go back, now we're at 30,000 to
We
purchase.
are, but we don't have anything else to give the officer that's driving the 3rd vehicle.
So we have no other options.
No, we don't.
Okay.
Well, we didn't ask for any new cars. I've got to have everything that I've got, and I'm hoping we don't have a crisis where we have a shortage of cars. But that's why we need these 3.
I just hate to pay $15,000 to rent one. And if we could at all do without one, you know, and then go ahead and purchase the 2 that are equipped.
I'm hoping with depreciation by next year, we'll be able to buy those for hopefully next to nothing, but I'll tell the car market, I'm not the car salesman.
I'd say it'd probably be somewhere between 25 and 30 for the 3
Bicycles are new.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is like, hey, we got a whole bunch of trail we gotta watch after.
I'll ride one
Put it on
for
a
trail.
Doesn't like a rice eater.
That's good to know.
60 months depreciation value.
How's your pension going? How's the federal contract going?
I'm still waiting to hear back from them. They told me 6 months ago, 4 months, no, we would hear something. We still haven't heard anything. I'm gonna light another fire, probably. I've done everything. They short of budget, and I'm, now, I haven't given up.
They did federal.
Exactly. Another one they told me 4 months.
You go to the custodian and ask him what he needs, and that'll get him through, because he knows what's in the waste can.
Understood.
Funnily enough, I took an ethics class today at work, and so I didn't hear that.
Speaking of that, as we get ready to go through the revenue side, that will be a decision that will have to be made. Is if we include, because in the county budget, historically, there's been $900,000 that relates to that contract. So a decision will have to be made as to what you want to do with that. If you want to put part of it in there, or you want to put all of it in there, or you want to put none of it in there, because at this point, we do not have a signed contract.
Kind of like playing Russian roulette. If you don't have, you don't have.
Yeah.
The dream don't come true.
Exactly. That's why I wanted to make it, that comment now since it came up.
Just think what would it be if you did.
What we're doing.
It's a 9-cent problem.
Just to let you guys know, if we were to miraculously get the federal contract back tomorrow, we are staffed to housing. I mean, I've got everything in place to accept federal prisoners. I just don't have the money.
Is the state contract still not paying anything? Or I know in general, the state contract doesn't pay it barely covers the cost of them being in there. So,
We have very few sentenced to these USC prisoners right now. Majority of ours are pre-trial felons. That's just, I mean, we're paying for it, we're not getting anything. Off that, but I'm ready the day that they say they will do it.
If they're so keen on formulas, I wonder if they're gonna fix that one.
No comment. Any questions for the sheriff, guys?
So anything prior to this on the sheriff and corrections, that could be file 13. These documents take place every first. Everything that's got the updated.
And I think the only changes between the original document and this one is the 15,000 for the lease and then the pensions and the insurance. Is that correct? Pensions is a big one.
Well, it's a lot of people.
Yeah. I'm just talking the jump from last year to this year. Or was it was miscalculated last year,
It's a
wasn't it?
lot of people.
Yeah. Oh, this is true. There's more people, aren't there?
I mean, if you're looking at, you can't compare,
Yeah.
you're not making good comparisons
Nope.
on that
I
one.
wasn't thinking about that.
Analytical on those two departments is just,
Out the window.
yeah, pretty much.
Let me ask you about the towing services. What is that? The towing services?
That's, y'all tow a vehicle, we pay the bill.
That's not the deal. We discussed that, remember?
Like on a seized vehicle,
Okay.
we pay you.
Yes, but not, that's not on the county cruisers, because they're not supposed to be charging for that.
Yeah, if we get the seizure, we pay the bill.
Okay.
If it's given back, then they reimburse us and it goes back in.
Gotcha.
So that's basically for
So
seized
that's what that
vehicles.
is, okay. We had one trying to do that here sometime back, and I make sure that they were still doing what.
Yeah,
they
that's
were
for
supposed to
seized vehicles.
And in here, did you include for the expiration on the bulletproof vest, or does that come out of special reserve?
No, we've included that in there.
Is it under the law enforcement supplies one?
It's under, law enforcement equipment or uniforms. I can't remember which one we put it under. It's, I think there was an extra $1,000 on that line.
Okay. I think it's on line 431. No, it stayed flat.
It's in line 716, law enforcement equipment.
5716.
We asked for an increase in there to cover that.
On this one, it's on zero. Am I looking at the wrong one?
No, it's, it's 50,000 on this, and it was 35,000. 54110,716.
Okay, it's 54110. Gotcha. I was looking on a different one. Yep. I was a page
Just
too,
me through them.
I was a page too far. I was on the 54210, which is the jail. I was like, wait a minute, why is this zero? Cool. Notice you had a pretty big decrease in the medical expenses for the insurance for the ones in the jail. Did you have a lot of people not pick it up this year? About went down about 40 grand.
A lot of them from the jail were moved to the sheriff's department, so it kind of lowered some of that stuff and raised it up on the sheriff's side.
If you're looking at budget, so last year when we budgeted the number of people, we put them in at the highest rate because that would have been the maximum. That's the most conservative what we do. Not everybody does that. So people take the other option, which is a little bit cheaper. So it also lowers it. And when you're talking that number of people, it causes a swing.
Line for the sergeants in the jail. Last year was 77,096. Now 234,936.
He said line 54210, 115-000 sergeants.
Sergeant.
Those are hard to justify from last year to this year because everybody was so out of place. We went in, we corrected where everybody should be paid out of. I think they were only budgeting for, they weren't budgeting for enough sergeants then, but on the salaries and benefit summary, if you did, I didn't reprint it off, but it should show how many employees are in each section.
Well, also you gotta take into consideration, some of them were paid at the lower rate, now they're paid at the higher rate.
Right.
Too, so that's a piece of it too. But I know with the lieutenant line, that one was wrong, people were being paid out of the wrong line. And so they were just, as you said, they were just kind of all mixed up. We worked really hard and gotten, I think, the majority of that cleaned up, don't you think?
Yes. So we should be able to compare next year to this year a lot easier than what it looks like right now.
I always say majority instead of 5%. With that many people, you might miss one. So,
I'd say we're right at 100%, 99%.
99%, there you go, that's the way to do it, 99%.
So I think we're there.
Somebody wants to complain about a 1% variance. I have a open window on the second floor of the courthouse I'd like to show you.
A little slow to say.
Any questions, guys? You know, I'm looking at this and my eyes are starting to cross.
Carolyn, did you say you had another recalculation on the tax penny? Tax penny? We used 109 the other night, and you thought it was closer to 1.
The one that he just gave me was 111. But, you know, he recommended that we not budget at that level because it does fluctuate. And the difference where we were at this time last year to where we are now, we were at 108. So it has gone up. But just, you know, I kind of took his recommendation on that. He said he would not budget it at 111. So I was thinking,
Who is he?
Right. Because I don't think we've ever pushed it all the way to the end. We've always left. It's been trending upwards over the past 6 years, like.
it varies. At one point, we checked it last year and it was 109. Then we checked it again a few weeks later and it dropped back to 108. So 108 kind of was the sticking point of that.
I know we've checked it before and it's been like 113, 114. That was 2 or 3 years ago, I think.
Yeah. So it does fluctuate pretty constantly.
So
So
for
111 is the highest that it's, you know, been recently.
So for our dinner napkin calculations, we're going to use 109.
I think that's the wise
Okay.
choice. That's when he and I sat down and talked about it. And then I talked to Department of Finance and Administration, and they kind of leaned in that direction too. I kind of explained to her what we were doing and what I was looking at, and she thought that was probably the wisest choice as well.
And I think that'll account for delinquencies in the upcoming year and other things like that as well. People that decide not to pay this year to wait a whole year to pay and catch up.
Well, I'll drop the percentage too, because we're sitting at about 99%. Can't budget 99%, so I'll budget 90% or 95% or something like that. Because it's just, again, we need to be conservative when we do this. And if the tax rate goes up, that 99% is not going to hold.
No.
So,
Chad, give me a number this morning, 109,955.
you pulled it this morning. So it's dropped that much in, what, a week and a half since you gave it to me.
They don't set that, what goes out on the tax roll until right before they send out the notifications. Anybody have any questions for the sheriff? If not, we're gonna move on to highway. Thank you guys for all your hard work and you guys for all your hard work into getting this straightened out.
Thank you.
He did all the work on that one and he did a great job. That one's a bigger.
It's a big one.
To get your arms around, so they did a good job on that.
So much better than last year's.
And see, yeah.
You're my first hug.
I mean, I'll-
You go
Bring your guitar tonight, Cody. Another missed opportunity.
Highway, like I said, it's pensions and insurance, and then I did run the 5-year average, and it's not quite as close as I did it last year. 1,600 last year, I think I had it down to like $100. And we did have to go back and do just a slight adjustment on it, because once you put the actuals in there, then it changes it a little bit, but that's way after the budget is passed, and they are aware of that, and if we have to make any changes, it'll be a budget amendment at that point in time.
Okay.
But for budget purposes, it goes in as budgeted amounts for last year and anticipated budget for this year. So everything held pretty close to the same thing. I looked to see where we were as of the end of the third quarter of the fiscal year. And then I adjust the property tax line till I get to where I want to be on the 5-year average. And that's just that Roger recommends or requested that so that the county is not funding him any more money than is necessary to keep our tax base as it is.
I know the state's passing a registration fee on electronic vehicles. It's supposed to be coming back in like Teslas and different stuff like that. It's supposed to be $300 per car. And that's supposed to be revenue that's coming in because those vehicles are on the road and not using any gas. And so that's going to be a $300 annual registration fee on that sort of thing. So I know that we can't account for that revenue, but do we have a line item to send it in with the whatever?
Yeah, but they'll create a line item for it when we get to that point. He did tell me he'll get more grant money for paving. Don't know exactly the amount of that yet, but that's grant, so it'll go in and out.
Does it have a match? That's what I like to hear.
No, and he's maxed out on bridge work too. If you notice the bridge work department down, they're maxed out on what they can do this year. The state's very generous with the highway department, and we're very appreciative of that.
I think I asked this question the last time we looked at this budget. Why do we have an increase of 42% in the secretary line? Did he hire a third secretary or a fourth?
So he has, technically, he has 3. One's out due to illness. So he replaced that one.
Okay.
And now she's out. So he does have a vacancy, but he does have all 3 positions in there, but they are not currently people that are being paid because they're out on leave. So he technically only has 1 in there currently that's being paid. But he did add an extra secretarial position. was gonna be part-time, and he ended up bringing her in because the other one was out on extended medical leave.
You going to the senior citizen center?
Well, I don't know.
That's like the little insurance went down here.
And does that affect his maintenance of effort? Okay.
No, his is based on that 5-year average.
Okay.
Which is what I did. So it's in there at the least it can be under the way it's written.
Okay.
CTAS hasn't confirmed it yet because I have forgot to send it to him this afternoon, but
I didn't know if it needed to be under a different line, like temporary personnel or something like that.
I mean, it's still, I can't go in and reduce his budget if that's what you mean. Like his payroll budget, I can't go in and reduce it because he's an elected official. So he can do whatever he wants to do within the realm of what he has.
Well, you could, but you don't want to get caught.
I'm not supposed to. Is that better?
So just for clarification, it's after it's over with, it's a pretty please, will you please lower this line back down?
Well, I mean, yeah, you could ask. You can ask them.
Because, I mean, we're funding 3 positions and he only needs 1 there. I understand why we're funding 3 positions, but it's just
He also is $300 and some $1,000 surplus in his budget over his revenue. So, I mean, it's not like he's short money from fund balance.
Sure.
So.
What is his unassigned fund balance right now?
It's over $4 million. He bought some stuff recently, so that's why I don't remember the exact amount.
I knew it was up there. I think it's the highest I've seen it. But he always comes back and uses it for paving or something else, whatever.
He pulled some money out because he bought something that he needed.
It was a truck and a trailer.
Is a vehicle.
Yeah, and then, oh my goodness, and then he pulled out $100,000 for paving, which will go back in because he'll get reimbursed for that. So no, he's pulled those 2 out. I think that's the only thing he's pulled out of fund balance that I can think of.
You said you cut this one to 1,600 on his main 5-year average?
I wasn't shooting to get quite as close as I did last year. I just, once it hit positive, I was, okay, we're done. 'Cause I got a lot of ribbing about getting it so close last year when I didn't really intend to do that. It just went that way, so. Evidently, that's not common. We have to be done that way. But it was part of his request, so.
Any questions for Carolyn since Roger's not here? All right. We shall Charlie Mike on to the revised outside agencies.
I wrote this down the other night as we were going through it, and then there was some question about 1 or 2, but I went back and looked at my paper, so all of it, Chad got it all right.
The one that I misunderstood apparently, Julie called, was the public library. I thought we had left it at that 80,000 request, but we didn't, apparently.
And the only questionable ones, I think, after that was the contract between the EMS and the contract between, the 2 on the rescue squad. And then 911.
And I do know that's the
Those
EMS
contracts.
and the rescue squad's on health and welfare for next week.
Okay.
Those contracts have not been signed, so they can still be amended. at this point. Once they're signed, of course, it is what it is, but this committee would have to make a determination of that amount before we would want to sign the contracts anyway.
I think what we had to set was the amounts that were in there already in the contract. Unless we change it up. That was the deal. The only other questionable one is the Shepherd's Inn. And I think there was some question on their paperwork. But Commissioner Odom had found that the gaming solicitation is in.
I think they're good.
Yeah,
So I
everything
think so
appears to
too.
be in
Yeah.
order.
Jay gave us a copy Tuesday.
Yeah, that was their 501 status, not the gaming one. That was the
As
one.
long as, and I think I don't know if can you even get the gaming status if you don't have your,
Their gaming status is fine.
I mean, you can't keep it unless you've got your 501c.
Well, they
Right,
actually
that's
don't go
correct.
back and, it's a little, there's 3 different departments, but they're good.
So they're good. Okay.
I did go back and look on my notes on the library and I had it at 75.
I think what we had talked about, because I had to look at mine, but I think we left it at 75, and then like we were talking, as if they came back and they needed more later, that would be something we could add to that. Like some of the others that we talked about.
Yeah, that is one of the ones, if you increase it, it can never be reduced. It is always at that amount.
So I think that's where that came from. The only other one was the Shepherd's Inn, and that was just questionable in the paperwork, so that one actually should be okay. So I think everything else on there tried to good, because it looks just like what we talked about.
The only other thing would be if anybody wants to make any adjustments on any of the amounts.
In our discussion, Mr. Chair, the other night concerning the first cut on this thing, according to my notes, we voiced an agreement that we would keep the fire departments the same.
Now, if you'll remember, Donnie Cable brought it up, and what it actually fell out to be was what, 497? Hang on a minute, let me look right here.
Julie was in for that one. I came in shortly after.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an increase of the,
Half the amount and then split it between the departments.
And we went with half of what they were asking for, which put them at 497 instead of the 525. And we had given them 469 last year.
Plus,
plus the ARP money.
Plus the-
I had to do the ARP report today, so I mean,
But that's what we discussed the other night. So if you want to change that, you do whatever.
no, I just said, Julie, my thought is dangerous, you know what I mean? Gee whiz.
We have to sing Kumbaya. Sheriff, come over here. He needs some help.
Need another hug, big guy, you know what I mean?
If I ever find a ukulele at one of the antique stores, I'm buying it for mine.
I have one if you want. It is an antique ukulele.
Let's see Mike playing a ukulele.
So as it stands right now, the increase of, for this budgetary period would be 252,865, correct?
the majority of that is in the EMS line.
Well, I mean, if you look and evaluate where the increases go to, has a considerable amount of public involvement or services to the public. Countywide rather than concentrated in an isolated.
Well,
What was the discussion that went on for the EMS side?
And we would wait until we heard from health and welfare.
yeah.
Okay. Because
And that you're looking 236,000 of that 252.
I remember at one presentation, they gave us a breakdown of what their employees already made.
Last year they did that.
Yeah, and it was high. I mean, whenever you look at even EMS personnel in Nashville and high concentration areas like that, what they were wanting to go to was above and beyond that, at least the research that I did. And so that gave me some concern. whenever they were making that budget request. But
On this one, I do believe, and y'all have to correct me if I'm wrong, that additional 206,000 was to put on an extra shift and one more ambulance, I believe is what he was talking about. Am I
I
right?
believe you're right.
I don't think it would cover the ambulance cost.
It will cover
Well-
the shift costs.
The ambulance, the low-cost ambulance was 246,000. That's
Yeah.
not the expensive one. It has all the,
Unless a
Serious medical
portion of that would go toward that and then a portion of whatever, if Elizabethan gives or whatever. That's what I'm assuming, because that's what I thought Nancy said. So. But you can't complain with an extra, I mean, people have complained for a year that we haven't had enough EMS services actually working and going. I mean, they've been out there, but unfortunately, we're stuck in the it's all about me category, and it's instead of a first come, first served basis. So really, if we act on this, we'll have to take out those two, correct? We'll have to just remove those out until,
Well, I think I think we should wait and see what comes out of health and welfare. I talked with Nick Holder today and yesterday too about the EMS contract. And I said, we're waiting on you guys. And I said, we would like to have a little bit more substance about what they're doing. And so he's been talking with Terry and Nancy about it. I don't know what that'll look like.
substance is really what it boils down to, because if they're just going in and giving a whole bunch of pay raises, I don't, we know their salary is already up there. I don't know if that's something that we want to dive on to.
But didn't Nancy say that they had already put on another shift, which was allowing the workers not to have so much overtime, which is how they were able to keep everybody all happy?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
That's what I thought too.
About a 35% increase in ours. So it's a pretty big increase. So,
And
I don't
didn't,
know what it's going to buy.
Might be something.
and did we end up allocating ARP funds to them or not?
We bought
an
an
ambulance.
expensive spread.
Yeah, the heavyweight one.
71, wasn't
We had the funds on it.
271. Is that right?
71, 280, something like that.
That's what I was thinking.
Pay attention to how they phrase things, and it seemed like when they were giving us that presentation, one of the things they kept bringing up was, if we get a call and someone wants to go to Bristol for a medical facility, or they want to go to Indian Path in Kingsport, they take them, and I feel like there was a reason they presented it that way. And you look at all the things going on with Ballot right now, and it's one of those things that I am sure is going to be revisited when they come back to justify what these increases are about.
Here in Bear Mountain, a lot of people would rather go to Linville. That's their first choice. And for a long time, they couldn't go there. They were, no, we've got to take you to Sycamore. Now, if that ICU shuts down, I mean, you're
Well, Sycamore Shoals, they've got, is it a CT or an MRI there? They've got one.
they have both.
They have both.
Yeah.
So if they do take out the ICU, I mean, there's not really going to be anything else going on in the hospital because they don't do a ton.
And then you got a situation double that they have to call the rescue squad to take them there. They've had a stroke, they get triaged, treated there, and then immediately sent out as soon as they're able.
And what I wonder there, are you getting charged twice?
100%. That's
I
true.
almost bet you are. We won't get into that in tonight's discussion, but I have a problem with that.
As do I.
TC has a problem with that.
Well, I know my aunt got transported before she passed away, and it was $543 for one bus ride, and they didn't do anything. It was just a transport.
Plus you have check-in and there, and if you're there for them long enough for it to test you and you're there for 4 to 6 hours, you're gonna get charged there and then transport time plus a secondary ER visit. It's kind of double dipping. No, not kind of. Sorry, I was trying to be nice about it.
Healthcare is a racket.
Yes.
There's a good story out there how we ended up in the situation that we're in with healthcare guy. What was his name? Adam Ruins Everything. It's on YouTube. You can find it. It's hilarious. Yes. So we holding off on outside agencies for the moment? Is there any corrections that anybody wants to make on anything in there?
Still think we're a little bit heavy on the first time ask on the Carter County Drug Prevention.
Carter County Drug Prevention. Jumping from 0 to 50.
Yeah.
I think not that.
Dropped it to 20.
Dropped it to 20.
In it. I think we're still a little bit heavy for first time ask, but that's.
10 might be a good starting point, and then if they do something great, we can look at that between now and next year.
It'd be brand new with no track record in their presentation or in their budget line. Starting from the lower, I think, would influence them to seek other support and revenue rather than be dependent on this.
You want to do lower than 10? Do you want to do lower than 10?
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
10, that most big.
Once they get some
They have
history,
literature.
once they get some history behind them, some being established, then they can come in with a different request, but they started out really too high. I think 10 would be a good starting place anyway for me right now.
But if you look at the grand scheme of things in total county with all the agencies, just like the sheriff's department, now we've got the prison and the monies, everything's being put in for it. Now we're having to buy more money back, something just don't balance out right.
And from what I understand, there's a lot of grant money available for drug prevention programs and stuff like that, so. I think starting out, not.
I just want to add something here where I'm not one of the nonprofits looking in at this. Personally, I feel looking at all the others that we're not going to do increases, but you're picking and choosing a few to do increases too. It's either an increase or not an increase. Because from looking at this, there's 2 others that got an increase on their request, which would be, I love them all. I'm just being fair here. If the spay and neuter and Boys and Girls Club got a $10,000 increase. Just saying, you've got some other good nonprofits that are there that put in for increases too, that do not get heavy grant funding when some of these do. And like you were just talking about the drug prevention, personally, they're brand new. They've never asked before. Like you were saying, you don't have a track record. I think it's great to have all these services in our community. But you also have Child Advocacy Center and other types of very hardworking nonprofits that are only getting 5 already. So why are the first time that they're requesting, they're going all the way to $10,000 or $20,000 for drug prevention when there's some other awesome nonprofits on there that aren't even getting $10,000 as well? And this is their first request. That's just my input.
Just to clarify, if you're using Children's Advocacy Center, they receive a lot of state and federal funding, and they come to us just for whatever it is that they need above and beyond that. So it's not a situation where Children's Advocacy came in here and asked for $500,000, I'd lobby for them because of what they do. I mean, I would lobby to take money from just about every other one of these to send it to the Children's Advocacy Center. But the drug prevention side, they're new. But advocacy doesn't ask for, and they've never asked for an increase in, I think, the about 4 years that I've been here. But there's some on here that ask for increases every single year. But by and large, for whatever reason, they either don't produce the results or we don't see the fruits of their labor. Maybe that's on them, maybe that's on us, but that's,
I'll use the example of Carter County Compassion Center. They're also brand new. I'm just kind of, just saying, they're brand new. They just asked. That's just all I'm saying. I just don't want it to, kind of shows like we're being partial to some and not others, and across the board, if you're either going to give increases or not increases. I mean, we're about to have to ask taxpayers for money. So it's just kind of like a tough spot. If we're going to have to ask for anything, let's pay our bills first. Let's see what we do, keep things where they are, and see what we can. I understand with EMS, and those are services that matter. I mean, in an emergency to our community, to our citizens, and it's going to cost us more to replace it if we don't keep them. So.
We'll have to, in an evaluation of the services or for the requester, things we need to look at is how much of the county does it support, does it serve? Now, that's one of the reasons why that on the increase on the Girls and Boys Club, their services more of the county than they do city. And the structure of the program for after hours in support of single mother, single father dependents, where they can be picked up at school, instructional environment down there. And I find that they are more from the southern district than anywhere. So it reaches the perimeters.
and to cap in with that, they fill in the gap where most of the elementary schools no longer have, many of them don't have baseball programs and things like that. They fill in for that. So
For me, that and Second Harvest, of all of them, are the two top runners, because Second Harvest provides all the food, basically for everybody, the loaves and fishes and everything. They're the supplier for all them on their cost. And it was just this past year that they even asked for the first penny. And I thought, oh my gosh, they had,
and if I'm not mistaken,
delivery was 50-some tons of weight of food that had been distributed from Second Harvest to all these other units.
and the 10,000 for that was, if I'm not mistaken, was originally to get was in support of the backpack program.
Yeah.
So
We went over each one of these the other night individually. We had an open floor discussion on each one. And it's not playing favoritism in one or the other at all. What it is you have more needs in some areas. Some overlap each other. And that's what kind of led us into this where we're at here. But there was, as far as, we all gave good solid arguments either direction. This is where we landed. And I felt and still feel very comfortable with the exception of what you said. And I honestly have to agree with you on that. I've thought about that one for a couple of days now. But we try to be fair and, try to look at everybody's needs. And it's not like they can't come back and ask later if they have a need that they have to take care of later. They can do that. They have that option. One came last year that needed the freezer, right?
loaves and fishes are both.
Those are things that we can do in the year that's not part of your balanced budget. So, and those are needs that come up at a different time. But that's kind of how that came about. So it's not showing favoritism to one or the other. It's just trying to see where most of the needs are at right this second.
I also got a copy of the city's appropriations, what they have projected. So a lot of ours are, some of ours are over. So,
The city's given.
so,
They're staying pretty well on the hard line. All right, that's, I figured.
they just, it's proposed, but, some of them were given over. So I feel like we're supporting them. Just wanted to see what we were getting from the public community.
Good idea.
See what kind of funds.
So where do you guys want to land on the drug prevention? Less than that or stay the same?
And for me personally, it's in a year that we're doing our wage increases and everything else, it's not a time that our county can afford. And as we look, and all the news says it keeps getting a higher and higher mountain to climb in terms of covering this, I can't see starting a brand new, putting any money to start a new program.
Well, it's now saved $10,000, so if you want to save more, just
I mean, I'm just stating my
let your
opinion.
chair know that that's what you want.
Yeah, this doesn't require any sort of voting because we're not voting on the amount. All we're doing is just notifying Carolyn to adjust it on the scale, which doesn't require a vote. So, and one of the things that I would bring up as well is we're going to have the rehab center up there. And the Tennessee Department of Health could also get involved in the drug prevention side of things in the high schools and different things like that. We don't know what their full scope is as of yet, if it's just treatment or if they're going to dive in and be a part of the community as well. So.
Well, I think that center is going to maybe be the creation of even more grants or more programs once they get started and see, you know, what they're going to develop that will be successful.
Especially whenever they see what they're getting themselves into being here. So.
We put the county as a whole out of its budget and out of its funds and everything else. Even though that was money that was obtained through the legal system. Drugs in itself, to put it to work by the consensus of everybody, that's where we put all our money to put it into the community. Every time that we put in, it seems like before that, you know, our people in black bags or ODs was unbelievable. Now they've created that. So now all my officers have to understand has to carry Narcan. Hey, Narcan, that's about like going walking in the forest with your friends. Snake bites you on the rear end, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
You know, no doubt about it. There ain't no conversation.
ETSU's contract for autopsies.
It got reduced. It was initially maybe 12%, and Patty negotiated and got it down to 5%.
Okay. Well, generally, that is based off of the number of autopsies what we have to do, which come along with unattended deaths that occur from drug overdoses. Like somebody ODs and everybody leaves the house, well, that's an unattended death, so there has to be an autopsy done to determine the cause of death. You know, it's pretty obvious. They've got a needle in their arm. Probably that was what it was, but. And so if we're seeing a continued increase, and I think we are seeing a continued increase in year over year for that.
Yeah, she got it down to, it was initially the higher amount. She got it down. Before we presented that budget, I was kind of holding off on it to see what was going to happen with those negotiations. So the night we presented was with the lower amount in it.
Okay. Or two, another instrument that can change that slowly is from the Attorney General's standpoint. It's not, if I'm not mistaken, and Doc Acuff can correct me on it, but they don't make the rule as to who or when you go for an autopsy. The Attorney General, if I'm not mistaken, that is the one that says, based on the information, it may be an unattended, but if the officer and the coroner decide that there is no foul play whatsoever, no evidence of it all, that's good enough. But there was a period of time, and this is what somebody misunderstood or misquoted what we said here, to personnel in the ETSU forensic areas. How they got started was that they had a forensic pathologist, coroner / from Cook County, Illinois, that was crap hot, they thought, And that's where they said, well, we want them every one, and we want to be there with it too while you're doing it. That was a riffle in the contract. But that number can be monitored and reduced by the Attorney General's office. Because we used to, correct me, Sheriff, but used to, when we run into that, we've always conferred with called the Attorney General or the Assistant Attorney General to give them a proof of what we had to call the shots when it came to autopsies.
Right, and I don't think the Jenkins Forensic Center does a bad job at all. I think they do a very good job. I do know under our last sheriff's, there was a disagreement between a number of the sheriffs in the first district that disagreed with the head of Forensic Center where she wanted to be at every autopsy, that she took control. And I think that the argument was, and still is, the sheriff's in control. Now, we can pay for coroner service at ETSU if we want to up the budget. I don't know what that figure would be, but I'm sure we could find out if we wanted to go that route. And I don't know. I know that we discussed at when we were talking about the forensics contract about the coroner and some issues that he has. And I think my only comment was that he reached out to ETSU and didn't receive an appropriate response according to what we were told. But, you know, they don't act as coroner for us either.
Yeah.
So sounds like the general final consensus is to go to 10,000 on,
Think that, or you want to go lower?
We'll go to 5.
What do you think, Cable?
You know, I've been sitting here looking at this, and outside agencies, including EMS, fire departments, we're spending 17 cents of tax dollars money on this amount, almost $2 million, 17 cents. If we want to be fair, we'll go back and give everybody, except the emergencies, what they originally asked for. And there's only one that's not, and that was the Girls and Boys Club. Give all of them back to the standard, what they asked for, or what they had last year in 22, 23. And that way, if you want to be fair about it, then you could give drug prevention 10,000, and everybody would be square across the board. If that way, you're not favoring somebody else over that, because everybody's getting the same amount, except EMS, rescue squad, and the fire departments. And the boys and girls clubs are getting 10,000 more. So
I have to disagree, because Butler Fire, that's what we discussed at length the other night, the difference on what they do up there and where we need them at. They were getting a difference too than what they,
was that,
Butler Fire.
yes, they're emergency, they would get the difference.
So you'd keep them.
All those emergency services, except the Boys and Girls Club, that got the increase. That's just my suggestion, to be fair about it.
I'm more in line on the drug prevention with 5, only because we don't know what kind of stewards they're gonna be with taxpayer money.
and one thing to remember in many of the cases for a lot of these different organizations, if they were not being handled by 501c3s, the amount of taxpayer funding that would be necessary to replace them would be a magnitude of, I would say, about 10 times what's on paper as well. So if we were to open like an official food bank within the county and have it staffed with county employees and different things like that, a lot of these would be considerably higher, and we would not be able to apply for the same grants that they can.
Do you think that the county's portion of these is enough that if we didn't fund anything, they would try out?
Some of them, I think the fire departments would probably,
Never make it.
they would go down. Imagination Library would probably figure out a donor to cover them. Soil conservation, we don't really have a option with because that one is based on the state or the USDA office. So that one wouldn't change, but any of the other ones, Children's Advocacy Center would probably continue to survive. Shepherd's Inn would not. Loaves and Fishes, they would be able to serve considerable amount of people. Isaiah House would probably make it. I mean, you could go down the list and you can tell probably who needs it and who doesn't. First Tennessee Development District is an allocation that they are told is this county's portion of their operating budget is what it is. Elizabethton Parks and Rec, it would just be a diminishment of services. Elizabethton City Fire Department, we wouldn't be able to get the training guys that we normally have, so that would be a significant impact. Senior Citizen Center, that would probably almost shut their doors, I would hazard to imagine.
So I think you made the point that that was taken into consideration when looking at this. Not that any of these are going to be easy decisions, but an all or nothing approach when giving everybody everything or nobody anything, it's not an easy position, but it's the one that we've been tasked with.
Different things. That's why the difference in some of the levels.
Yeah, and
you do have another option.
well, and you,
You can't take out of your unassigned, balance the budget, but you can use something toward these. They're not recurring costs. They're not about, they're just a one-time.
So let's talk about the fire departments for a minute. So we have how many fire departments? Seven. $28,000 increase over 7 departments, 4,000 each. I don't think that would shut them down.
well,
I value what they do, don't get me wrong, but I mean, we're trying to cut costs to help with these employee wages, and that's $28,000. So
well, if you look at it from that same side, what we do by having those fire departments and funding and staffing them, it creates a reduction in their homeowners, in county taxpayers' homeowners insurance. So
I understand that.
if my thing would be this is if we don't pace it with incremental increases over time, then the fire ratings could drop and then it's a whole year before those come back up. And so it might end up costing more than just this, because if somebody's fire rating changes from a 5 to a 6, I want to say it's like an 8 or 10% change on their insurance. Like each one of those increments is a certain percentage. So
My point is on this, they just got the ARP. So
valid point.
that's why I say that. I mean, and this year, we're giving raises, and it's a different year. Well, it's a different year also as far as getting the ARP funds. They're not gonna be there next year. So this year is $4,000 gonna, is it gonna, what kind of effect is it gonna have on our volunteer fire departments? $4,000, I mean, looking on it from the outside, I don't see it when they got ARP funds.
Really just got $150,000.
$150,000, so
Surely they ain't that poor managers, because they've existed longer than anybody.
they're tearing out equipment, I'm sure the ARP funds was good for a lot of different needs within the department. So this is just a thought. This is, and at the Boys and Girls Club, I'm good at 5. I feel like that, we take 28 and 5, that gets, we're almost down to 200. So from 500. So
So you're saying reduce the boys and girls
that's
to
just
5,000?
my food for thought. So
Is that what you're saying, reduce them to 5,000?
I understand a lot of these we've not given increases, but all of these we've supported, except for one.
You said on Boys Club, your recommendation is to reduce it to 5,000.
Yes, a 5,000 increase to 25,000.
That's what I thought you meant.
The consensus on drug prevention was to drop it to 5. They're out of gate.
Yes.
And consensus was to leave the fire departments flat.
From the 497 back to the 469. Is that what y'all thinking?
Yeah.
Leland?
So that was $38,000.
265, not 245.
All right, Madam Director, looks like the request at this point would be to drop the Boys and Girls Club to 25, the drug prevention to 5, and county fire departments to 469. To get us something to
Fire departments to what?
469.
469.
Which one ask?
No, the amount approved last year. Yeah.
So what about East Tennessee Spay in there? Was we gonna leave it alone or drop it? They were getting like 1,000 increase. And it was just for Carter County.
Yeah, that one stays within Carter County, and those are given out as grants and $25 increments. So basically in giving them 1,000, what we're doing is we're giving them 40 more people that they can provide spay and neuter discounts to. Is that right? Yeah.
Does that move it to 214? What you got?
7, yeah.
Okay.
214, 865. Total.
Off those totals from the bottom.
You just revise it for whenever we go for the final vote on that one. Once we hear back from health and welfare on the EMS and 911.
Well, remember too, that has to pass the floor first before it can go on here.
Yeah.
So that really needs to be before the full commission this next session. The 911 contract.
We have a full budget meeting before then, and so the 911 contract, the EMS contract, this could all be on it and be cleared and done.
The 911 contract, is it going to health and welfare too?
Yes.
Like that, we want to do.
I don't know that Nick's got it on his schedule for.
Oh, or is it financial management that it goes to next?
I don't know. I was questioning the amount of it. I know they sent something out and then they sent out a revised. I just want to make sure the 245 is correct because I was looking back at my notes.
Yeah, they dropped.
It's 265.
I thought they dropped.
Yeah. Remember they went on the floor, they dropped by 20,000 because of news that they were receiving.
Okay. Yeah, my notes maybe not be correct then, because I was looking back at my notes and I had it in there at 265. And that's why I was looking here and it's at 245.
Yeah, the 245 is correct. It's the same contract amount as last year that miraculously somehow didn't get signed by anybody.
Last year was
We'll get signed.
225.
220.
And then it went to 245 and then they missed that. That's what that
It
was.
will get signed this year.
And
I can't sign it, but
They hadn't had one 4 years.
it'd been 4 or 5 years, because I'd asked about it.
Contracted off.
I disagree with the fire department. I think you should give them.
204,865?
I'm gonna be done.
But I disagree.
It drops down by
Taking the fire
38,000.
departments down to zero.
Does that one drop?
Down to where that was before. 469.
Oh, no, that one dropped 15,000.
469?
Sorry, I thought they said they were going down.
204,865. Is that the number?
497.
That's what I was coming up with.
So revised total is 204,865.
48,000. So what's total projection going through the health and welfare, $777,470. 21 cents according to what they're going to submit.
How much?
777,470, 21 pennies.
For EMS?
That's on those two line items.
That's for
EMS.
577,
Yeah. Gotcha.
Rescue.
The rescue part.
577 and some dollars, plus 200,000 for the squad, which is the rescue part of the combined comes to 777.
You know, the rescue part's been 170 for the past couple of years.
Yeah.
It's not gone up any in, I want to say 3 years. So, and I think whenever we first came on, it jumped from 150 to 170.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mr. Cable.
I disagree with taking the fire departments back down to 469. Give them $3,000, that's less than a penny. Tax dollars. $3,000 will help them because of the increase in fuel and increase in maintenance on the vehicles.
I won't disagree with you. I'm running with the general consensus of what people are looking for here.
Well, I thought we was already done the other night when we were looking through all this stuff. but
Well, that's what we
We're
agreed to.
back to zero now, so I don't know.
Evidently, that's not what we're going to do.
Because they don't get the opportunity to go to the county filling station and fill up there. They have to do it at the pump.
What do you guys think? Well, I thought we knew what we thought the other night, but apparently we don't. So what do you think now? You in concurrence with Donnie or not?
Because diesel ain't cheap.
If we give them 3,000, that takes it to 490 instead of 469. 3,000 each.
So you're saying 21,000 rather than 28?
Yes.
So putting it to 225,865 for the increase?
1,000 for an increase.
And what you guys think?
I told you what I thought. It was just, hey, the year of the ARP, so, I mean, that's just my thinking and trying to provide wage increases, so I think every dime counts. Like I said, not taking away from anything they do, for sure.
And it's like any of the others. I mean, if they do fall short, it's not like they can't come back later and ask. I mean, they've had to do that.
And we funded 2 different
Fire stations.
fire stations this year, different things like that. Those are
Actually,
3, yeah. Valley Forge.
New Hampton substation at Simmerly Creek and then the big one on Stony Creek.
Oh, yeah. I forgot one on Stony Creek.
We know what happens when that happens. You give one department this money, the other one says, no, I want it too.
Well, look at that.
That's
You all learn in kindergarten where the need lies, because the need right now at this station may not be what this station needs, but there'll be a need at this station later. So to me, that doesn't count for anything. We're not in kindergarten with what one gets, they all get right now.
No, that's, reality is,
I know.
you should do this. but not with 7 fire departments. That's what happened. That's what happened with 150 you give to Stony Creek and Hampton and that. That's how come you give them all
The basis
150.
on that is when you got, which Valley Forges was falling apart, bad shape.
We're not in kindergarten.
Literally fell apart.
We should be able to play in the same sandbox.
Well, and my thought process has always been on the fire department is that it should be the association is the one that's coming and asking for funds for a particular department, and it's already been voted on through their committees and different.
That is actually something that they are doing now. If a department comes without going through them, that does not go well.
Cool. I didn't know that.
Yep.
So,
Because there was the bullcrap came up at the end of the last fiscal year, pulled in year by 2 fellow commissioners that's unemployed. That's why that rule came about, period.
I would have to stand with Danny on this, the 469 for now, and then if something comes up, we can deal with that later. It is saving some money. I mean, not that they're not worth it, but we have to be practical in this right now, so that we're not having to tax so much.
and I'm not saying anything in like indemnifying of any of the individual fire departments or anything like that, but I know Stony Creek saw a significant drop off in donations once they put in the 5-lane. Because people just hop over the other lane and go on, they don't feel any guilt anymore. But, all right, so square that away for the next one. We should have the final.
Yeah, what we doing with
204,865.
Is that leaving the fire at 469?
Yep.
Y'all good with that?
I'm gonna, whatever gets us the lowest possible, but when we have to ask the taxpayers to raise it,
Forever, you just have to know what you think.
that's it. If it was lower, I would support that, because any of these organizations can come to us at any time and we will cover their expenses out of general funds if it's necessary and required. But on an annual budget, it's just not feasible. Keep running deficits.
All right, so
We're all good with everything except what we're waiting on the EMS and the. Oh, and then
Take a
911.
break. Yeah, take a
Yeah, let's
break.
take a break.
yeah, before we get
Done.
into the crazy discussions and all that fun stuff. I intended to do it 10 minutes ago, but didn't want to interrupt.
Thanks.
Give him his hug.
Oh, we're done getting this up.
I'll catch you before he gets up.
Yeah, that's right. We will.
Don't remind me about the ukulele, I'll bring it. It's a bit of a black bottom legend, I think,
Kenny was sitting out at the Rock and Free Kumbaya.
Bring it back.
Stand is 1 and 2.
It's raining, so I think we can get away with a fire too, Brad.
Make a recommendation. I would like
I can come back and break again.
You can have that if you want it.
These numbers, which,
Carolyn?
That's
I mean, it's
without
just a
the,
recommendation.
I ran through
Have to do with your phone.
they took out,
yes.
Why are you recommended for somebody else's department?
No, just for this.
get you down to
Down to 5, yeah.
Fire department's
490 or 469.
We're at
Yeah, they stayed the
Picked
same.
up in my Gideon.
Boys and
Better
girls.
shoveling
the camera and I turned the mics off.
It's not working again. It's funny, this one always stays on. I think that's the voice lift one and the other one's the stream. I don't know. I don't know. So we'll go ahead and start with the painful one. Where's everybody landed at as far as employee raises go?
Well, I know that some said department. We know we were looking at different type of category simply because of what we were, the gun we were under. But I've been talking to different folks in different departments. And, you know, they said at this point, they'd be happy just to get a raise. I mean, you know, I said, we settled, we landed on that 250 mark, did we not? Just as
Yeah,
a-
that was
as a playing.
preliminarily 250, I think was where most people
And
were.
they seemed more than fine with something like that. So they're not gonna throw themselves on the floor and pitch a hissy fit. When they get that, you know, somewhere in that ballpark area, I think they would be fine.
The major thing that concerns me is the number of positions that we have that are in the 10 to 11 range. And those are the folks that everything right now is hurting the worst because it's a bigger chunk of their paycheck. Welcome back. We didn't get into anything major.
But on that, they'll get the bigger increase in percentage.
Correct.
So, you know,
That was why we moved to doing flats, is because
The percentage is not fair.
it brings the bottom up. It brings the bottom up more than it pushes the top end up. It's just like the school board said they were giving everybody a 10% raise across the board. With the vast majority of the people that work in the central office, I mean, you're looking 60, 70, 80, $90,000 a year that they make. That in general, from the last time that we looked at it, that's the highest paid people in the entire county. They're the ones, if you take that portion out of it, then the county's median salary drastically drops like $8,000 or something ridiculous. So we know that that's a significant, bump that they're getting there. And if you go back and check through the governor's stuff, the drive is to get teachers up to $50,000, not to push the top end administration, into the $100,000 to $120,000 range. So I don't.
If you look, in each of the presentations from our departments, it was required by the finance director when they made their submittals that they place I won't call them billets, but the positions in each one of their departments. And on the backup, you'll find that it shows the current salaries of each employee. You go in each one of those departments and you see what the median is, not the average, the median is. And then you think about, the comment just made, the ones that are $11 an hour, those are gone. They're not there because look at every one of them. And they're close to each other from register deeds, trustee's office.
I think Ronnie still had a couple people that were like at 11, like around 11.
Well, you're gonna have ones and twos, because it was 2 years ago, we went in
And get them all.
sure that nobody was below $10 an hour, period. Now, this is full-time, it has nothing to do with part-time, because part-time is controlled by the office holder.
And those are generally cheaper positions anyway.
But it depends on the occupation, because of the part-time, I'm gonna say in the first responders in corrections and that, they're certified officers. They've just retired, they're allowed to work 120 days, I believe it is. And you don't have to, you can't put a part-time officer, hire a part-time without those certifications in those positions, so it's mandatory. But you look at each one of those, and you see what they're saying, and that don't count their benefits. This is just salary.
Yeah, if you start looking down on the benefits line, somebody that makes, just pulling one out of the air here, 53,000, they have 18,000 in total employee benefits. Somebody that makes 112 is 45,000. Somebody that makes 27 has another 15,000 on top of their wages. Some of them that are part-time, it's way less, it's like 1,500 or something like that. I'm just looking at the highway. So the total cost, quote unquote, of an employee, in many cases, that line out there to the right doesn't matter. Because a lot of them aren't taking the health insurance, or they're not taking other things in there. I'd say there's more taking insurance now than ever have been since we did the insurance changeover, but there's a lot that don't, especially black guys in the sheriff's department, because some of them are former military, so they get TRICARE. So why do I need, I don't need your insurance, I've got TRICARE, so.
With the current 250, which we agreed with, I'm gonna say, just
The preliminary starting point.
to start with, if you took that, and you went, well, here's what circuit court clerk, you go down through what the salaries are, that puts the employees, all of them, way over $32,000 a year.
Not all of them.
Well, right here is your pay scale on everybody in the names of the department and what
That's what I
they're.
have too. I've got some at 26.5. On this one, if she's still there.
Maybe,
Yeah.
right here, the lowest one in there is 28.9 is the lowest in their employees. Does that also give us a chance and the information we need to make sure that there was not, that number of employees, there is actual number standing and breathing?
And also bear in mind, the documents that we have are completely anonymized. If you have one that has somebody's name on it, please don't say the name.
They should be done with any name on it.
No names. So, for the average employee, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, $2.50 is $5,200 a head. So it's basically giving them a $5,200 raise.
So you got, well, let's see, let's look at, here's.
Obviously less taxes and all that other fun stuff, but the base number is 5,200.
The lowest paid in planning department is 29,000. Trustee's office, you only have one, and it's at 20, the lowest bid is 28, but the others is mid to upper 30s and 40s.
Many of those employees, the ones that are in the 30s and 40s, it's lifetime.
27.2 is the lowest, and the highest is 34. The lowest out of all the departments we have reported is the animal shelter.
Yeah, animal shelter and the landfill.
Well, landfill is way above the animal shelter.
Not according to what I've got.
So you got,
There's laborers.
let's
up
see,
there
you've got
making
laborers at
10.65.
23.6 and 124. Clerical, there's one clerical at 23. Labor at 22 and the rest of them are part-time.
And do we want to split this between X amount of dollars for full-time and X amount of dollars for part-time? That's a consideration as well.
Now, the road department, because of the skill level, that's going to vary between equipment operators, truck drivers, and all this.
You got to find the deal.
You look at their annual salary, they're still setting, part-time 31, labor 27, labor 30. All the laborers is between 27,955 and above. And didn't you add, you say the 5
5,200.
Puts you up our 33,000.
Did we want to do a split between full-time and part-time?
Sure.
In general, whatever we've done for full-time, we've done about half for part-time. Just, that's a historical reference for everybody. When we did it at the sheriff's department, it was full-time got X, part-time got X. And then past couple of years when we've given out raises and bonuses, it's been full-time gets X, part-time gets X. Or X divided by 5.
And then your highest just about per capita is going to be your chancery, because there's in between 36 and 38,000 without any. County court clerk, 26,500 is the lowest, up to 40,000 on the highest one in their office. And their assessors, there's only one, the lowest, and it's 28,700. So mainly the 250, which I'm not saying that's in stone, that still puts everybody above the 30,000 mark. The overwhelming majority are not counting buildings. And when you look at the census, the household income on it is 24,700. The census came out at 24,631 was the last census taken, what the median house income is in the county.
Yeah, that includes inside the city as well as outside the city. That's a complete picture.
Poverty level is more so in, they're about 2%, 3% higher than what the county is when it comes down to the poverty. So I think whatever numbers that this committee makes a recommendation to the full commission will put a pretty good increase on their wages. And be, if you just one amount, it's going to be fair basically all the way through, because there's going to be some variances because of seniority. And it's up to you. I think Doc Acuff and some others been involved in on longevity award, which is still being looked at as an additional benefit. And that's all commensurate on how the budget turns out this year as to how fast and how far that goes.
The poverty numbers, like the minimum income salary, not looking at the total amount, but the 2023 income numbers, if you make below 30,000 in the US for a family size of 4, that's total family income. That's the poverty level. It rose $2,250 in 1 year. And that's the most significant increase. Most other years are around 1,400. Some are less than. In 2020, hold on. I can't see the earlier years. This just goes 22 and 23. So, seems to be a rather significant, almost 3%. Sorry, almost 10%.
Now, when we established the working point of 250 with the county employees, and this is excluding sheriff's department and correction, because those are already locked in, it came to $850,472 for the 250 mark. So law enforcement, first responders, or corrections, that came at 1.5 million. So if you kept it 250, that means you're down around right now 2.3.
Basically 8 cents. Then the sheriff's department increase, total increase versus last year versus this year is around $2.9 million. That's total overarching for everything. The increase is about $2.9 million. That's salaries, insurance, everything. Because one of the other things that's kind of biting us in the rear here is the 8% increase in insurance costs year over year.
Well, it really shouldn't become a big factor because we've been way above the 10% mark.
But it's still,
I mean, this is the least that we've had since the beginning. We had a tremendous savings on the first year. Then, of course, COVID and everything went in, but that is all dependent upon claims, major claims. You know, from our employees, determines all that. So if we had estimated to see, we've been using, what, 13%, Carolina, on the insurance, when we were doing estimates all year to year.
Yeah, 15.
15, okay. And it's down to the 8 cents. That's a heck of a savings that Brooklyn has done a magnificent job of doing that. Year ago, when there's others that was above, they're still above us.
Yep.
Other agencies way above us.
How many employees will receive this raise?
I can hear you. No.
How many employees will receive this raise?
Everybody.
How many employees?
Total number of sheriff's employees we have.
Everybody with the exception of sheriff's.
Like 200 and,
How many?
it's 200.
100 no, the sheriff's department already got theirs.
Yeah.
They've already got there.
It's 100 and,
The whole total amount was 236 counting law enforcement.
yeah, so it's like
They
125.
take 100.
How much
125-ish.
that will receive this raise? I counted 147, but I was just counting off of this list.
Are you including part-time in that too, don't you?
And this would be the full-time, so the part-times are the 25.
Let's pull out the part-time and see what we can do with them.
Yeah.
And let's get the full-time, see how many they are, then we'll get close to a number. Because I used 147, and if you go at $2.50, you'll have 7 cents on the tax rate, which is 764,000. That would be what would be the tax rate on 2.5 cents, $2.50.
See, my
147.
initial, I
You're
don't
forgetting-
pull it, but my initial had some in there for part-time too.
Yeah.
It wasn't just full-time, it was in there for across the board, just as the initial estimate. But that has also been done several months ago, and it's a moving target. People come and go.
But if we had some idea, there's this many part-times and this many full-times that will receive this raise, we could come up with a better number as far as what the end result's going to be.
I can go in and rerun it as of basically now, because it will be, that number will be different.
Right.
So I can go back in and rerun it based on the number of employees, not do it by department or anything like that, but just in total.
Can we have that by the May 4th meeting? Can you do that?
I will. How's that?
Okay.
And of the general fund departments,
Get it done on weekends.
Not this weekend. I'm taking this weekend off.
well, you need to take all weekends off.
Yes, she does. That's what I've been telling her.
Yes.
On weekends.
This is coming from the chairman of financial, or the chairman of financial management and the chairman of the budget committee. You are to take weekends off.
Okay.
Period.
I've been trying to keep up with her. It's impossible. I gave up. I gotta throw in the towel.
Chad, I'm gonna give you keys to a lockbox, and she puts her phone in on Friday afternoon. And do we know the change in the total general budget without any raises right now?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I've got bits and pieces of it put together. And what I did on that particular schedule, I actually added that today. So I'm going in and looking, I know now what the difference is for the highway compared to last year in order to get us to the 5-year average. I think it was like 49,000, something like that. It wasn't a lot. What it would be for the schools, which was the 558 as as things stand right now. So I'm putting those numbers down at the bottom so that we can get a rough estimate of what it will be. And then I'm working on the revenue side of it as well, but that's kind of a work in progress right now. I got some information on that yesterday. That would be helpful as far as trying to calculate it.
All right, so I'm going to run through some quick numbers and have some other people check me on it so we can have an idea of where we're going at. Just so we have a number to aim for, we'll say the 250 at $850,472 from the original calculation. We don't have other numbers to spit out at that point, so we'll go with those numbers. Then we've got an increase of $204,865 from outside agencies. We've got an increase of $558,000 tentatively from the school system. And then just looking at the sheriff's department budget, just looking at the numbers off of it, is 2.9 million. That was the total increase there. And so if we just run with those five numbers, so we got 1.4 for either the jail or the sheriff's department, and then 1.5 for the other one. Doesn't really matter in the scope of things. Then we've got $850,472 for what would tentatively be the raises for the county employees. And then we've got $204,865 increase in the outside agencies. And then we've got the $558 from the county school system. And let's run those numbers up a flagpole and see what we do. What?
4.5.
I double added one.
Question on the raises, the redoing the schedule, part-time, do you want them still in there at the $2.50, or do you want me to reduce it to $1.50, or what do you want me to do? Reduce it half?
Tentatively, let's go for half. Let's go for half. That's what we've done historically. We'll run with that. We'll run with that at the moment. And so, yeah, $4,512,865. So, and then we take that number and divide it by 109,000, leaves us with 41 cents unaccounted for tax-wise. 41 and a half basically is where it's at.
And that is a rough estimate.
Yeah, that's a rough estimate. That's a rough estimate. That's not anything set in stone. So far the state's told us not to count on anything extra from tax revenue. So we're not going to try to adjust the revenue numbers from that. We'll run that, typically conservative. But just to fund just this part is looking at 41 cents. And all the departments by and large went up. So we're not going to be able to go in and sneak out we can go in and sneak out nickels and dimes and potentially, come up with $70,000, but I don't know if that's the best thing to do. I mean, if you go in and you continue to gut things, you're going to have more people coming back in and getting into the unassigned fund balance throughout the year. So I don't think asking for significant cuts from anybody's budget is going to make any significant difference to the bottom line is what I'm getting at.
If you look at the, I'm sorry. No, you're fine. If you look at the presentations and your budget submittals, there is no way that you can go in there. The biggest percentage went to pauper's burial. That was the biggest. That was a 31% increase from the year prior to.
Yeah, and there's
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 of those on our presentation. That was at zero increase or in zero increase or less. And for those 1% and 2%, and you go back and look at them, that's for tires, batteries, fuel. It's items that were, you have to have, there's a lot where you can go in and cut it. You know,
By and large, if we were to take out just all the salary stuff and we just went into the line items for materials needed, technically you should be looking at a 9% increase across the board in that, but they're willing to cut it conservatively and say that they can make do with what they can get by with.
Okay, well, I've got a thought.
Okay.
So, they did a great job leaning their budgets out. No big expenditures and everything, but I have been thinking about this. You know, I think that 4% of total department budgets would be something to look into. See if there is some fat in there that could be trimmed. That'd be $1.6 million. That'd be a third of what we're talking about. So that was my thought, to ask the departments to reduce their budgets by 4%. So I agree with Mr. Johnson that, you know, they did. They done a great job leaning these out. I agree. There's a lot of them that have a lot of negatives on there. So, but, you know, this is unusual times and we're trying to make up some wages. So you know, I think it's 4% to me is not a lot to ask. Just a thought. I want your feedback on that. Another thought I had was educational wheel tax. Educational wheel tax at $25 per car, this is for discussion, will be another $1.7 million. Now we're up to 3.3. So then we're down to 1.3 on the property tax. So at 1.3,
about 15 cents,
15 cents. So now we're down to 15 cents. So these are
That's workable.
things that I've been thinking about, just kind of spread it out a little bit. Like I said, this is an unusual year, just like with the fire departments. You know, I'm all for the fire departments, but this is an unusual year. We got ARP funds. Well, also, we're looking at giving our employees the wages they deserve. So then we need to look at all the avenues. So this is what I've been thinking about, so.
Just pointed out during this discussion, because I think the sheriff would beat me if I didn't, but that 75,000 per school, it's like $1 million. That's unexpected. So that's just revenue that we have last year.
Yeah.
Which
That
we
is
still have to, you know, run the numbers with all the revenue and everything, because I know everything's fluctuating, but I mean, that is a piece that's unexpected.
So that increases, property tax was undervalued in the budget last year. So we're gonna put it back to what it should be this year. And it is up basically 3 cents. I don't think we should take the full 3 cents. I think we should only take 2, but that is gonna increase that. Sales tax, I'm not comfortable with increasing much more than it is already. But I mean, I've been working on an analysis, Lori's been helping me with it, of every line item. Because that's what we did with the animal shelter for an example. We went in and we looked at the revenue that the animal shelter was bringing in. And we did not overstate anything. We just looked at what it was coming in and we balanced her budget by doing that. And she cut things out of her budget that she didn't absolutely need. It's, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a process, but I feel like we need to do that on the county side too. There could be line items that have been the same for the last 4 or 5 years and not been changed, but yet they're running significantly over that budget in actual. We need to look at those line items, make sure that we're very conservative because we do not want to overstate the revenue in the budget. That would be really bad. But just look at it at a very conservative stance and see if we can find a little bit, even if it's $50,000 or $100,000, it helps take down what it would be on a tax increase.
On a $500,000 budget, it'd be $20,000.
Well, to support you, real deal, if you'll go in on all of these also in the documents that we have presented us from the departments, look what your unencumbered is for at the end of the year.
Yeah, last
You
year.
don't want to go in and say, you know, think that you can cut 50% of all that. Remember the tentacle, of that unencumbered, 50% goes to building and grounds, capital improvements. And then 50% now goes to your unassigned fund balance. And you go to your unassigned fund balance and you look and categorize what has went through our court system for additions. And if it was an oversight because of the prior year budget, they didn't think through it, or something new cropped up, a new demand. So we have to be careful about that part. But with that unassigned fund balance, with the unencumbered balances at the end of it, I think what you said is, that's true, it can be done. They just have to sit and think about it.
I mean, like I said, they've done a really great job. And when I was thinking about this, I was like, well, they've done a really good job leaning these budgets out. But, if we could get that 4% at $1.6 million, that's big. So.
Well, some of that, 4% is a bit of a misnomer because in many of the cases, we can't lower the salary line items.
Okay.
So I don't think we can get all the way there because we can't just look at the total budget. We could only look at the non-salary budgets to see how much we could recoup from that because we can't attack the salary line items.
That should be a small number because on your unencumbered, if you look at the salary line items, they're basically 100% at the end of the year, which would mean there would be ones or two where vacancies have existed for maybe a month or 2 months. There'll be some that, you won't be able to do that too.
But for some of the departments, we can't, like on Rogers, we can't go in. If he's had vacancies, we can't go in and drop his by 4% on those. And those could be, $40,000, $50,000 increases, but they've got maintenance of effort. We can't go into it.
Those are all good thoughts, and I would agree with them. The only thing, we're still gonna have to come up with that 1.6. We don't have a wheel tax yet. It's gonna take us 2 years.
Yep.
Even if we do a private act, it's gonna take us 2 years.
Yeah, if we did it by resolution, we could get it done faster. And it may be an easier sell if we're saying specifically, this money is only going for that. And we set up the resolution, and then after we do it by resolution, then we get it in place to where it runs. We can go in and ask the state to do a private act because you can set the private act up to where it will directly fluctuate with the TISA formula because the formula is laid out completely. And I would not be opposed to just doing a complete education wheel tax where that burden is taken completely off the unassigned fund balance and the tax roll. Because it would be $6.6 million, I think, to pull that completely down. And that would take care of, and we could even lower the property tax rate just to a large degree to make up for that difference to where we don't just have this gigantic flush year.
Yeah, but you'll never get a large wheel tax to go through. That's why I said a smaller wheel tax to alleviate a portion or percentage of what you have against it. You'll never get, I don't want to pay a $200 wheel tax.
Well, that would be for the 11. I forgot that the tax amount goes in on that as well, because it's 6.6 is what's on the account.
A smaller amount will be much more inclined, and you're sharing that cost across the whole county.
And then too, you're gonna end that wheel tax, we're gonna consider too the time frame. Because it's more than a year before you will actually effectively see the revenue. Because first is you gotta make sure that when you pass it for a private act, that our general assembly is in session.
Yep. So it would have to land and go in and
time frame when they're working. And if you're outside of that time frame, that means you got dead time until they come back in session.
And there's a referendum that has to go through an election as well. And obviously we have to pay the election commission to add that on to the ballot. And if it doesn't pass, then that's unrealized. So the property tax still has to go up until that would go in. And then would you reduce the property tax back down once it went in? Because you don't know what's going to occur between then and then.
You don't, but you've got a couple things. And I think having the idea of asking them to go back and look at it when you're increasing all the other employees in their department's salary line items, is a good time to ask them if you were ever going to ask them to cut 4% or anywhere close to that. But also next year's budget cycle where you potentially have a sheriff getting a federal contract back that won't be realized in this one. It'll come up next year.
Another $1 billion we got to account for.
And we shouldn't also lose track of our only revenue sources right now in the county and making those more efficient and better, especially at the landfill, what we can do to get back on track with all previous year's numbers were. So we've got a lot to work on in the future. But how do we get through the current?
And there's another piece in there that we have to account for as well, and it just slipped my mind. Oh, I remember now. If we're asking all the other county departments to go in and cut 4%, there's no reason that we shouldn't ask the school system to cut 4% as well.
The only thing you can't do is go below what last year's funding was
On the school?
on schools.
Well, I mean, based on what I know right now.
Yeah.
Right now, and I've got a lot of questions out there to a lot of different places to get confirmation. But what I understand right now is the 11 million that and I've got a copy of it again here too. That's it. I mean, we can't go in and take anything away from them other than, that is it. So we can't go in and ask them to cut their budget. Because the formula is so much different now than what it has been in the past.
But right, if they're changing the formula, now would be the time to say, hey, what of this don't you need?
Yeah, but I
I'm
think,
not gonna tell you.
Obviously, they're not, but
I mean, based on what I understand, the state is saying we have to fund them this amount. They do whatever they do with it, but we have to fund them. As a governing body, we have to fund them that amount. And that's basically the question that I put forth to them today. Pretty much bottom line is, are you telling me that this is what we have to fund them regardless? And of course, I haven't gotten an answer yet, but I sent it to like 6 different people and the email that they say all the questions need to go to for this new formula. So hopefully I will get an answer back from at least one of those that I copied on that email. Because I just sent it out to everybody at once.
and we do have the current year that I think we can still file MOE on. If we are overfunding under the current formula, because we're still in that current year. They would,
That I'm not sure.
because they entered into the talks with us initially, knowing the new formula was coming out and knowing that we were overfunding under the current formula. Otherwise, I don't think they would have done that. And also, I went back to the emails that I had from Rick Hall and some of the other guys at the Department of Education, and they said that the MOE for this current year is not going to change. So we still have the opportunity to recoup that at least potentially for the general fund.
I'm just not sure since it has already been appropriated to them, kind of like it is with appropriating money to any office holder. Once you appropriate that money to them, you can't take it back. So I'm not sure that that's an option.
Could one of you approach Attorney Harden with that question and let him do the research?
I did, and he did not think it was an option, but needed to look into it further.
Because if that's the case, then you're never able to file maintenance of effort. Because we set the budget at the same time that you would be filing the maintenance of effort. Maintenance of effort doesn't look forward, it looks back. It looks back at the previous year, and it's a 3-year running average is what it goes on. So it doesn't affect their future years' funding. It affects what you have already provided to them.
Well, on what we did last year, or what we looked at last year, and what I understood now, this is under the BEP formula. It doesn't have anything to do with TISA. What Marianne explained to me was that they allowed for a certain percentage to be taken out of the current year's budget, even though the overfunding could have been several $1 million. They kind of applied a formula to it and came back with a number that was significantly less than that. But that number was applied to the current year's budget. under this formula, they're telling us what the current year's budget is. So if the county was funding above and beyond that, then yeah, you can go back just to that number, but you can't go below it. But as I said, I've got these questions out there because no one really knows. This is so brand new that I don't think anybody really has all the answers. And I think one of the things that's taking so long to get answers is because
Everybody has questions.
everybody has questions and things may be coming up that maybe they hadn't thought about yet, or I don't know. I look at it kind of like with the ARP stuff, the same kind of process. We were asking all these questions during that. And, it took a while to get all the answers to it because it was brand new. And so I'm kind of looking at this as the same way. It's a brand new formula. It just came out. So we really don't have the answers to all these questions, unfortunately. The problem is we're at a time crunch where we need them, and we need them right now.
Well, maybe Josh will have an answer for us, and I hope he will attend the May 4th meeting.
I can ask him to.
I think that would be appropriate.
But the other thing too, this being a new formula, and this sheet, same that the finance director has, that's new from the state, which is under the TISA, nobody can explain it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, us 8 are the brightest people in the world. We got to pass a $40 million budget. Think about it. You don't even watch on this sheet. Heck, I don't even know, not that I'm the brightest thing in the world. But my question was to him, it has in here maintenance of effort. Whose maintenance effort is that? They go from the head to go down to here, then they'll come back up to head again. They don't have an answer. And I say, turn them down until the state can come in here and teach us and tell us what these numbers are, where they come from, and what the longevity of them are.
And
So you can't get locals to give you. CTAS, they're up here on the head, the state's down at the bottom, and they'll just switch on the whistle. And that's no good. We've got to fund our county, and we can't get any help outside of here. You can't get the same answer for the same question out of here. And the only thing I know to do that is force their hand, bring their little scrawny butts right up here and explain it to us.
Explain how they're coming to at least give us, in layman's terms, say this is how we came up with this number. Because if you look at it in the scope of what we know, we are still providing funding to the school system as if there were 6,600 students there.
Yeah, I know.
Obviously, the cost of students has risen over that same amount of time, but it's down to 4,400 students. And they're saying that not only are you no longer overfunding, but you're now underfunding. It begs the question of where did you arrive at these numbers? How did you arrive at these numbers?
What is it doing? It's forcing us, it is an unfunded mandate
And
of the government.
And on top of that, the state provided like $4.5 million to pay for the raises. In this right here, they're providing an additional $4.5 million to pay for some of the raises that are coming in, and they're supposed to provide more money next year for further raises. And so if those are the cases, why is if the vast majority of their budget is still this, why is it still going up $558,000 if you're going to be providing $8 million over the next 2 years?
According to this document, this $11 million is based on 4,446 students, not the 6,600. It is based on the current amount of students.
Right.
It is just the base of it is an amount, but then all these other things come into play. And so that's how this formula is so much different than the other one. And each one of these line items on here has a different explanation. I pulled down a document that I found related to it. I didn't have it initially, but I have it now, that kind of explains some of the line items and what those line items mean and so forth. But this document is based on the current number of students, not not what we have been basing it on in prior years.
Right. One question, where's the $4 million realized on that document that they're supposed to be providing extra?
See, another question, that's why I say, put them right in the middle of the floor.
Because, I mean, the total budget's only changing just a little bit overall. But the state has like the baseline funding for an individual student, and it comes out with a number. And then all the reasons that you should get extra money are down the list. And then it comes out with the number, and it's just a little bit higher than it has been in prior years. But the amount that we're required to fund has gone up, whatever our maintenance of effort was, plus another $558,000.
Almost 550 now.
Yeah, so,
And we're getting that from the local system, right?
no, these numbers are coming from the
Yes, they
state.
are, but it's not breaking anything down, so I would have to agree with Mr. Johnson.
And by that same token,
I know.
they're providing raises, they're providing a 10% raise to the central office, not just teachers. If they just said this is only going to teachers and paraprofessionals and custodians, I'd be like, no problem. But there's raises tossed in there for the back office admin. And if we've seen the backside number of that, a lot of those guys are paid $80,000 and $90,000 a year.
2.4 million just for central office.
Yeah, see, point in case.
But the thing that is also, I'm assuming they're not extending our deadlines that we have.
No, they're not.
So they're not gonna present here, come here or anything. They're gonna force your hand. You're either gonna be in violation.
Did come in here and take over the county?
No, they're gonna say, not from that regard, but they're gonna say you're gonna be in violation of your.
They should have been doing it 8 months ago.
You
Never
have,
made a deadline yet, so.
you can go to August before they even start looking sincerely, even though you have violated the timetable.
No, I agree with you. I just think it's messed up that how the state is pretty much saying you will be in violation of us or you will agree with what we said and you're not asking any questions.
The other part of that too, I think in conjunction with that, if at initial they don't want to cooperate with it, then Senator Lundberg, which is on the state education panel, then we need to get in contact with him and ask for his assistance to get somebody to explain the formula.
And FYI, Carter County has the greatest increase in the state as far as what the county has to fund.
It's good, but we still have the responsibility for approval and the knowledge of it.
Well, what I'm saying is it's costing the county more than any other county in the state to increase the funding.
I agree with Brad. Somebody needs to come from the state, explain this new system to us, so we as commissioners can understand it before we can make a decision on anything. I agree. If the local school system can't do it, then the state has to come do it for us. Because somebody down there knows that we need some help.
There has to be an accountant down there for these numbers.
Somebody's holding all smoke and mirrors down there.
And
Need to come up here and review it.
one other thing, we're still responsible for the school system's budget and the approval of said budget. Ultimately, it still comes through us.
Yep.
Just because it comes through their board doesn't mean that that's the end all be all. It still has to come through the county commission. So I understand, and to say that we still can ask all the questions that we need to make sure that we're not on the short end of the stick, because we don't know what information has been passed to them as far as the budget goes and what students are supposedly on the record versus what students are actually in attendance in the schools and different things like that.
Well, when you get your staff, and I'm gonna refer to the finance director as many times and as many people that they've contacted daily, don't have an answer. What are you supposed to do? There is no other alternative. Somebody's going to open up their eyes down below. It's not local. CTAS right along with the comptroller and with the school, the education department of the state is going to take some responsibility. They're the one that instituted, since it's a unfunded mandate, and we had to plan for the future. What do you know about the formula?
And one of the things with regard to the county budget versus the Board of Education budget is is this is extremely transparent. You can show this to anybody and after a couple minutes, they'll be able to understand it. I don't think you can do the same thing with the Board of Education budget, considering it's the same size as everything else.
It's better than it has been in the past. They worked really hard on it. I mean, I
Back to
have to
your-
give them credit for that.
Recommendations on the wheel tax. If the wheel tax don't go, what other option do we have, or where will that put us? If we reduce it by the 4%, and then
It would be at around 25 to 30. Because if,
It's not going to be a lot if you don't mess with the salaries, because there's where all the money's at. It's in the salary.
the salary is
Leave the
about,
salary there, you take everything else, you take 4% of what's left, how much we're going to have here.
But we'll have more than what we do if we don't do it at all.
Yes.
So
Some.
that's my point.
All we have
Just
to
trying
do
to
is we can
grasp
ask.
what we can, just like when we went through the outside agencies. We're just trying to trim and trim, just to get as much more to save our residents money.
yeah, it was about 293,000 that it was dropped by, so roughly,
And a little.
roughly 3
It
cents.
won't be I understand it won't be the 1.6, but I mean, what's the feelings of everybody? Think?
I think it's, to me, that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, because the two departments that we can't really do it on is the sheriff's department and the highway department.
Yeah, I figured it on 40 million. I took them out.
Yeah.
So, when I throwed out the 1.6, I figured on $40 million budget, so.
Well, then that brings it to a point of, I may mean this from a commissioner to commissioner, but I'm going to chastise you, Chair. You cost me 2 cold bagels this morning,
Oh, how so?
by your interview. My phone has lit up. I've had 6 calls in the 9 years I've been on this council. I've had more than 20 today.
Dang, I had zero.
Dang.
I'm at zero.
Oh,
It's only as a recommendation to you as a chair because I've been in your position. Unless it's been passed by your board and it's in concrete, do not reveal it to the press. Because
Well, John was here.
I
John was here.
don't give a crap where he's at. My phone is lit up. When I don't get to see gun smoke with my bagel in my hand, I get pissed. And it affected, I even had previous commissioners call.
Yeah, Mark Tester called me.
Oh, God.
I called Mark after I left yesterday, after we left the other night, so.
Please, as a recommendation, unless, that's the only thing that's gonna cover your hind end. Tonight's the first time and you all have to admit, it's the first time we put any numbers together to even come close to a guesstimate. Yeah, not a good estimate, it's a guesstimate. And then you went out and told the evil ears, and it went out like wildfire.
And it was not
What
only
it
the,
did, it really made the residents of this county mad.
Yeah.
That's what them phone calls is today. I mean, I got my hind end chewed this morning.
Now, I think a minimum of 25 laps around the monument before we go.
Do I have to do them consecutively? Oh, okay.
But as a commissioner of record, please don't do that again.
But it's not far off. And if we come in under that,
Unless it goes through your committee.
but if it comes in under that, we're sitting a whole lot better off than if people are thinking 10 or 15 cents and it comes out to be 30 or 35, they're gonna be way more ticked off.
we're not done yet.
Exactly.
And if we throw a number out there with it being non-approved by this committee, if we throw that number out there, that's not an accurate number. So we're not done yet. I'm all for not throwing a number out there till we say all lies. And then that way, just saying, I've got the phone calls too, and the emails and the text messages.
You're in the river with a boat with one oar. Well, you done it. If it's approved by here and it fails, there's a whole lot on that boat with you. There's all kinds of oars, we can go in a straight line. We'll take it together.
And faster.
Plus, we have ownership of it, you know.
Really, we shouldn't even talk to the press until that number is set. And when
We were
the
tossing around
public knows
numbers
what
and-
we're going to do.
My folks just called really upset because I had a lot of people say, I can't afford a great big increase. I don't have it. That's what I heard today. And of course, I came in and didn't take breakfast for my guys. And the first thing I got, you probably wouldn't get if I took some breakfast because they were giving me this stink eye over that. She said, why don't y'all just hold this up?
When you go to church and they hit you, you know.
Now, if I go to church Sunday and I get hit with it, if I go, I hadn't missed in years, but in my morning devotion prior to lifting, you get moved over to the right list a bit, I'm gonna see if I can't bring some help.
Still, but as it stands right now, hard numbers, we are looking at around 40 to 45. And even if we do pull another, let's say we pull 750,000, we're still not much above it. It's a reality check that that's where we're at right now.
Well, the time frame we got left, under your idea, the Deal Act. Yep. Let's see if we can communicate with our services and our department heads and everything else and see what that 4% can bring in and monitor it against the unencumbered fund balance for the year to see how that fires out. I don't know how fast you've got your hands full. Hopefully, see, next time we meet, it's gonna be on May the 4th, is that correct?
Yes, 6:30.
And the sad thing is, everything's gonna be, like, we're looking at our normal budget meeting on the 8th, isn't it?
I will say, I can't speak for every department because I didn't do all of the budgets, but with the sheriff's department, 4% is gonna be a hard ask because he really did shave it. And, I'm sure he's willing to go and look at it again, but as far as, getting that 4%. it might not be.
Juvenile services had 34,000, but that was one of the things that I was asking about, contracts with government agencies. That's money that goes out. Thousands for evaluation and testing. They already dropped it to 200, down from 1,000. Some of them, you've got $75 left. Some of them, you've got $300 left. If you're going in and pulling out 4% in some of those, it's still not going to be.
There's some that's not gonna be able to, but there's a great deal of, if you go back and look at the unencumbered. There's some that would be a lot left over. Really.
Whatever it is, it'll be money we don't spend.
Yeah.
It's worth the ask.
It's worth, to me, it's worth
The ask.
asking, I think.
You constantly can't go in and say, take all the unencumbered fund balance, because we have other parts that we have to keep in use and operation at the same time.
And they'll be helping their employees.
Yes.
Because they're gonna enable their employees to help their wages. So I think, I hope that we've got 100% buy-in on this. They'll look at it and really try to help their employees. And help them in the long run.
Right thing to do.
But to have to go up as much as we might have to, it's, taken away from the raise. So.
That's what's coming regardless. Can't change it unless we come up with some significant revenue.
They don't get a raise.
Ooh.
May the 4th, 6:30.
May 4th.
May the 4th be with you.
RD, D2, is that what?
R2D2.
Yeah.
Carolyn's got one thing to add before we call for the motion.
So are you wanting me to go back to the department heads and ask them to go ahead and look at making cuts? What do you want me to do?
Yeah, go back and ask them to make the cuts.
Just saying on that board. So if I go back and send that email out tomorrow morning, that gives them 3 days. But, I mean, we've got 30 departments, it's gotta get that back to us, and we've gotta get it put back in and rerun the numbers
Okay, so that's in that.
in 3 days. And I'm not here on the 2nd, I'm in Knoxville already.
Well,
So not thinking that.
what's the next meeting, Paige?
The 8th.
So we got it 4 days later, so does that, well, that help you?
The 8th, we can work it in on the 8th.
Well, basically, that only gives 2 extra days because 2 of those days are weekend days.
I'm just saying, like, for example, I'll just use Jared, for example, Register of Deeds. I mean, they don't ask for much. They have a tiny budget. There are certain things in that budget that he can't cut. It's, it's gonna take a minute to try to figure that out. I don't know that it's small, but a tiny budget like that can come up with 4%. I don't know that they can.
$4,000, because I think one of the budgets we looked at was like $100,000 or something like that, $120,000.
And we can't touch those payroll lines on those budgets. So just saying, it's not, some of them, it would be easier than others, because they can look at the unencumbered and say, okay, well, I've not used this amount of money, so I can find X number of dollars historically by not using what I've requested. I've just requested the same thing year over year. But some of the smaller ones, I thought about his, I thought about the clerk and master is the same way. That's a very small budget. They ask for very little. Some of them are going to be harder than others. Some of the bigger budgets, they've got a lot more cushion in there, and there's cushion in some of them. I'll be
Smaller.
honest with you.
Smaller the budget, smaller the cuts.
Well, let's see, I mean,
Some of them we realized in last year's budget, like sheriff's line items got some in there like $64,000, but in the following year's budget, it's not even in there at all. So it's a whole lot smaller than what it looks like.
He cut a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
There was cushion in there and he cut it out. A lot of it.
but in the long run, if we can't get it accomplished by the fall, it may be sure that you may have to call, especially for.
We've got other meeting dates built in as well that we could probably get it at, because those are built in as meeting dates, not as hearing dates.
Not in May.
It's not in May.
No, I mean, we can add them because it's not been published yet. We can go in and add another.
I don't care for waiting until June. We pushed the envelope last year. I would rather be a lot more settled, even if the only department we have to wait on is school system. I hate that waiting and then pushing it out. And something, you get a wedge in there somewhere and it's a mess.
All right, what day works better for everybody, Tuesdays or Thursdays?
As far as May.
Yeah. Just in general.
Okay, is there anything the Thursday after our budget, which would be the 8th, 9th, 11th? Anything on the 11th? Any other meetings in the
I mean,
county?
11th is school board.
We could just do it later, couldn't
So we could do it, if we did it later,
do it at 6:30?
so if we did it at 6:30.
Blame me,
That I'm off.
blame me, Layla.
That's a big
I'm
help.
off Thursday, so I can
Some
make
of
that.
this is,
Okay,
well,
McQueen,
it takes, well, I mean, I think it's been a little bit of time.
Does that give you time?
I'll make it work.
No, I don't want to hear that. Does that give you time?
It'll be tough, but we'll make it work.
Okay, so we'll look at adding a meeting on the
Simple yes and no to you.
11th, and then an optional meeting on the 18th, and then an optional on the 25th. So we'll add those three to the calendar. The 11th for sure, but the 18th and the 25th is optionals.
You want me to go ahead and have her add on to the,
Yes.
11th, 6:30, right?
Yeah, 11th at 6:30, 18th at 6:30, 25th at 6:30.
Not that revised calendar.
This is an unpublished calendar.
And the 20 what?
The 11th, 18th, and 25th.
Okay, so the 11th and the 18th will be at 6:30.
Yep.
I will need to go I'll look at the calendar, the rest of the county calendar and see if anything's on that. I don't think there is, but
Even if there is,
Well, the 18th
it doesn't affect the people on this board.
I guess it's fine then.
It's fine. The only thing we have to worry about is this much.
Yeah, because technically, I guess with this group, we could meet in the conference room.
Yep.
Or someone else had a,
Down the front.
And like I said, these are meetings, not hearings.
yes, I
So
will make sure.
Gee whiz.
May 11.
That was just a bunch of meetings that
maybe, maybe not. I mean, it's a good idea to try, but
That's funny, because that's what I told my husband this morning. That's what I was thinking in lines of doing a portion of it for education. Portion for that, so we were kind of on the same.
at 6.6, and that would drop 66 cents off the tax roll. It's $116 annually, but it drops 66 cents off the tax roll if you reverse it. Because as it stands for their total budget, what we pay them, if you just look at it in property taxes, it's 100 and some odd pennies that just go to education. Now they get the local option sales tax, and then they also have the 177 fund. If we did it for the full money and dropped the tax rate, the property tax rate back, that gives us a whole lot more room. But again, it's 2 years of pain of it being part of the main budget. But then after 2 years, you would be able to drop it back to whatever you would need to. That was the whole reason I said you do the whole thing as an education wheel tax. That way, everybody knows where their money's going. And whenever they go to write out that check, they're going to be a whole lot more scrutinizing of what's being done and what's being spent on and different things like that. Whereas right now, 90% of the people don't feel the pain because they've got a mortgage, they've got an escrow account that pays out the property taxes. But if you go in and that mortgage payment goes down every month, $20, $10, something like that, that's something tangible.
I think it's gonna be a hard sell to get anything over $100 on wheel tax.
I think it's gonna be a hard sell to get anything on the wheel tax at all.
The big thing about wheel tax, and I've been in here when there's been a few times been proposed, that it never passed because they didn't put into it.
Or they would not, or it's, the big problem with wheel tax is that it is not, unless you tie it to a specific formula, then they can come in with a 2/3 majority vote and change it. And that's the problem. But if you tie it to a formula and put it into a private act, then they can't touch it. It can't be touched in the future. And as the student enrollment continues to go down, the wheel tax will continue to go down with it. So as the enrollment goes away, the wheel tax goes away.
You know, we got here, let's all get around our chairman, and walk into the car, we'll fight the press, media, all keep his hind end out of trouble, we'll have a nice fresh morning.
Who's got the duct tape?
Silence is golden, but duct tape is silver. All right, who's giving me the motion?
Motion.
By Cody, second by Gwen, calling it at 9:04.
I think Brad was doing the last time we tried a wheel tax, and there was signs as far as you could see.
Oh, yeah.
And in the hallway, and outside the courthouse.
The whole reason that it would work is if you say, hey, we're putting in the wheel tax, but we're dropping your property tax. Be the first county in the state, in the history to drop their property tax.
At the end of it, you can't raise it.
Not driving.
Somehow even your ideas.
The wheel tax would change based on the TISA formula annually. It'd be completely hands off.
Somehow your ideas even less extreme.
All you're doing is picking.
My actual ideas are looking at
County Consumer Services.
Yeah.
Sheriff's Department. Yeah, maybe a little more extreme, but not the first one. So.
In the morning.
That was real simple. Mine was got all. Outside.
It's not gonna say that it was you, it's just gonna say the committee has requested.
That would be
No, everything. Planning committee.
Hey, Brad, I want to ask you a question you probably know the answer to.
Is it a dumb question?
No, I don't think it's a dumb question. I don't think it's a dumb question. Why do we fund the outside agencies as part of the full budget?
I have to go get.
What is the alternative?
We have them come in after the budget year and basically do unassigned fund balance.
Well, if you look at the amount of money that all of that accumulates, I mean, you take that out, in fact, you take that out of your unassigned fund balance.
Yeah.
But when you look at, like I say, you look at what you've already financed on your unassigned fund balance for the fiscal year, what they're for, you're near that red line.
Because we have to maintain 6 million in unassigned fund balance. Is that what it is?
6.7.
6.7, 6.6, and it was somewhere around.
No, it really comes into play.
But, so that means we've got a $4 million play. And the only reason that we don't is because we have a rule internally that states that we can't balance the budget using the unassigned fund balance. We have to balance it based on tax revenue. And the state has told us that we don't need to do that. I completely disagree. But
It would be a good stopgap until you get a federal contract in
But
place.
the other, if you got a good set of
That's
more
another $1 million.
extremities.
That's another $1 million.
If it's not a first respondent, related first respondent on outside agencies, you guys gonna have to go to work for solicitation. Because Gresham counties don't have it. The Johnson City does not have that at all.
And another $1 million that we're not accounting for is the federal contract for
And I look at
that
this
bond
too, if
payment.
we can pull,
So
the,
we're actually at 50 million.
if we can pull the maintenance of effort, that would cover roughly $1 million of.
That's why I don't believe in any form or fashion we should be withheld from going for the maintenance effort.
No, there's no reason.
I don't want to talk to Josh. Josh is a lawyer. He's not an accountant. I want that damn accountant up here.
I want CTAS to say, yeah, you can do it, but it's not going to do you any good. But I'm going to look at CTAS and say, but it's $1.5 million that's going to go into our general fund, our general unassigned
That
fund.
would cover your entire outside agencies for this year until your stopgap, you get your federal contract in place, you get your landfill revenues back up as things.
Well, the other thing.
You're closer to budget approval.
I'm glad you mentioned that. You know, we're going to have to go into building mode, ain't no matter. You look at our
$6 million
You look at our debt service, we can handle it.
in debt service.
Well, not totally, but we can make the payments for it because we're right now in a good 3 million and something.
I mean, I think we're gonna have to get way outside the box, or just wham hammer the